So what might happen next? Let's bring in our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. Michael, in terms of just what happens in the short term, obviously we have to see how these impeachment proceedings unfold. But President Yoon was more pro-America than recent predecessors?
Yeah, well, he was more actively aligned to the emerging American agenda. So he was more tough on the North, because previous presidents in South Korea had tried sort of détente with the North, and they tried to ease relationships, partly because people in South Korea feel an affinity with the ordinary people in the North who are living in this hermit kingdom under this tremendous dictatorship. So he'd gone against some of that emotion in South Korea, been tough on the North, very pro-America, more tough on China, or more prepared to face down Chinese demands, which are fairly consistent. And he'd put a lot of effort into aligning South Korea much more with what he thought was the emerging line in the United States, and it now is the emerging line, which is to be tougher on China. I mean, the Democrats in the US were being much tougher on China. The Republicans are going to be a great deal tougher on China, as far as we can tell.
I guess either way, whatever happens, Korea is likely to remain very pro-America, so it doesn't change things hugely.
Yeah.
Step back for all of this for us in terms of the region as a whole. Most of the time, we're talking about Taiwan as it relates to China and that potentially going in different. Will it be worrying just to have any instability at all in South Korea for the West?
It is. I mean, look at the map that we've got on screen now. The places that matter to the United States and to the Western world in general, to the liberal democracies, are South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, all there in the northern part of the Asia Pacific. And as it happens, all three governments at the moment in Japan, Taiwan and South Korea are minority governments. They're all going through domestic political crises. Now, this is the worst of the three of them. The others are managing their crises within the bounds of their own normal political process. So that's not a major problem in itself, the political crises, but it's not helpful that all three of them have governments that are controversial within their own countries. Mm-hmm. And the Taiwanese, of course, are being very delicate. I mean, President Lai of Taiwan, I mean, he went on a visit to Haiti and to Guam. And because he went to American territories, he actually was roundly criticised by the United States, by China. I mean, he's very controversial what he's doing, because the Chinese get very angry if the Taiwanese show any form of separatism from China, because he's in his particular government. It's the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party. That's the one the Chinese are most suspicious of. And then in the south of the region, I mean, you've got the problem of the South China Sea. And when you look at the south of the region, the Chinese claim sovereignty over most of the waters of the South China Sea. And that puts them at odds with the Philippines, with Malaysia, with Vietnam. And the Americans constantly create these FONOPs, freedom of navigation operations. They sail their ships through the South China Sea to prove that they can. And the Chinese are building bases on coral reefs and atolls in order to expand their influence. If there is a war in East Asia in the next 5 to 10 years, one imagines it might start in the South China Sea.
And obviously we hope that doesn't happen and don't expect it to happen, but the US's bases in South Korea will be key for that, and key either way to America?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of troops in South Korea, nearly 30,000. Last time I looked, it was 28,500. And they've got a very big naval base at Busan in the south. And that's a relatively modern naval base, takes about 50-odd ships. The South Korean Navy use it, and the Americans use it. And it's big, it's modern, and it's expanded. And that's very important to the United States. Their naval bases in the region are part of their power projection, their ability to actually create military power and move it around, say from Okinawa in Japan to Busan in South Korea. I mean, they're very careful how they use their naval assets. And, of course, the Chinese are determined in the near future to make life very uncomfortable for the US Navy in exactly those areas.